Typhoon Kajiki has brought powerful winds, relentless rain and mass evacuations across parts of Vietnam and southern China. This storm, which gained strength over the South China Sea, has already disrupted hundreds of thousands of lives and left a trail of flooding, damaged homes, and widespread fear. Kajiki first brushed past southern China's Hainan island before making landfall on Vietnam's north-central coast. It struck on Monday, August 25th, with wind speeds measured at around 118 to 133 kilometers per hour. At its peak, the typhoon had reached as high as 166 kilometers per hour before weakening slightly as it approached the Vietnamese mainland. The Vietnamese government ordered one of the largest evacuations in recent years. More than 500,000 people were moved from vulnerable coastal areas, with official estimates ranging between 500,000 and 586,000 evacuees. The provinces of Thanh Ha, Quang Tri, Hue, Da Nang, Ny An, and Ha Tin were among the hardest hit and most at risk. On the ground, the storm's impact was immediate. Floodwaters swept into streets and homes, toppling trees and cutting power in many neighborhoods. Reports from the affected provinces described entire villages surrounded by water, with families forced to leave behind belongings as they rushed to higher ground. In some areas, residents stood in waist-deep water, waiting for assistance from emergency teams. Schools and government offices were closed, and several airports suspended operations. Dozens of flights were canceled, stranding travelers and leaving local residents unable to move between provinces. Authorities also ordered boats and fishing vessels to remain in port, fearing strong waves and storm surges that were forecast to rise more than 3.5 meters along parts of the coastline. The human effort to respond to Kajiki has been enormous. Vietnam deployed around 16,500 soldiers and more than 100,000 paramilitary personnel to help with evacuations, rescues, and relief work. Soldiers could be seen carrying children and elderly residents to safety, while rescue boats moved through flooded streets to reach stranded families. For many, this evacuation was not just precautionary, it was life-saving. Across the border in China, the typhoon's outer bands drenched Hainan Island before it reached Vietnam. Authorities in Sanya, a popular tourist city, issued China's highest level of storm warning, a red alert. Roughly 20,000 people were evacuated from low-lying areas, and more than 21,000 fishing crews were called back to shore before the storm passed. Businesses shut down, tourist services were suspended, and public transport came to a halt as Kajiki lashed the island with winds and heavy rain. In Hainan, streets were littered with broken branches, while piers and seaside roads were battered by high surf. Forecasts warned of rainfall totals between 25 and 35 centimeters, enough to trigger landslides and flash floods in hilly areas. Back in Vietnam, officials also raised alarms about the storm's potential to bring more than 300 millimeters of rain to some regions, an amount capable of causing serious flooding and crop damage. Emergency bulletins highlighted the risks of landslides in mountainous provinces, where soil had already been saturated by earlier seasonal rains. Despite the heavy evacuations and rapid deployment of response teams, Kajiki's force has still left scars. Roads have been blocked by fallen trees and debris, cutting off smaller towns from relief convoys. Electricity and communication lines have been damaged in several areas, making it harder for families to contact loved ones or call for help. Yet even in the midst of the destruction, local communities have shown resilience. Families in evacuation shelters are receiving food, water, and basic supplies. Volunteers, alongside soldiers, have been helping to transport the elderly and children, ensuring that no one is left behind. As of now, Kajiki is expected to weaken quickly as it moves inland over Vietnam and into Laos. However, the heavy rainfall it brings will continue to pose risks of flooding and landslides for days to come. Officials have urged people in affected areas to remain cautious, avoid flooded roads, and follow instructions from local authorities. In summary, Typhoon Kajiki has forced hundreds of thousands from their homes, tested emergency systems in both Vietnam and China, and reminded many of the vulnerability of coastal communities to powerful storms. The storm's winds have begun to ease, but the humanitarian and recovery challenges remain. Emergency efforts continue, and help is still needed in many areas. For those affected, the priority now is safety, shelter, and support as they wait for floodwaters to recede and life to slowly return to normal.
现在是5点不是？